Today's Boxing Day. A great day for warmth, celebration, and pugilism too. But it's also a time for remembering.
After all that stuff you've been waiting to buy all year is on sale, and with so many great games to choose from, it kinda makes you say, wow, why did so many good games come out in 2012? It's funny because if you go out and read the news, it doesn't look like that should have happened at all. Overall game sales have been declining since 2009, but this year they took a nosedive. Retail sales are down 20%, Sony's at junk status, THQ was on its last legs, and there's news of layoffs everywhere you look. And that's just the end of the year. Nintendo has been selling the 3DS and Wii U at a loss this whole time, and even after 11 years of development, Blizzard got put in an apologetic position for Diablo 3. After failing to sell enough of the game, EA is now just giving away the absurdly expensive Old Republic MMO, and Zynga did bad enough to literally bring its leadership to tears.
But you know what? Destructive corporate destabilization can be fun.
For the consumer, 2012 was a very comfortable year to be playing games, and that feeling of comfort is actually kinda weird these days. Our evil corporate overlords graced us with a lot of really solid, hardcore releases, and what's weird is that so many of them were fresh new IPs. There were games like Dishonored, Dark Souls, Sleeping Dogs, and also Walking Dead and Chivalry. Plus, it's been so long since we've done anything with an XCOM game that Enemy Unknown almost feels like a new IP. But even the big-budget Doritos-sponsored AAA sequels managed more critical love than usual. People really seem to like the new Borderlands, Blops, and Halo. Far Cry 3 actually stood out as being an unexpected critical hit, and somehow managed to revive a tired franchise that is far, far away from where it started. But really, it was the smaller projects that stole the show. Hotline Miami and Journey were amazing emotional experiences at almost opposite ends of the spectrum, and FTL proved that crowdsourcing can work. There was even this awesome little free indie horror trend going on that brought us stuff like Slender, SCP, and Cry of Fear. For some reason, a lot of people really wanted to make a scary game this year, and the Back to Basics horror revival gave us commercial releases like Lone Survivor, Home, and Anna. DayZ became a phenomenon by putting the horror into a multiplayer sandbox, and WarZ became a phenomenon by ripping it off and failing spectacularly.
Ah, yes. Justice is sweet. 2012 wasn't an ordinary year by any stretch of the imagination, and its juxtaposition between dismal financial results and great critical results means that something's amiss. Something weird.
Let's put it this way. When 3 graphically cutting-edge tech demo shooter games for the PC are being released for free, something weird's going on. When the most exciting big-budget modern military shooter out there was a scathing, self-aware caricature of its own genre, something weird's going on. When I found myself playing a visual novel written by 4chan that was an unexpectedly serious story about having sex with crippled girls, I knew something weird's going on. I mean, this was a year where Zynga nearly died under its own weight while unpaid fans released a nearly complete remake of Half-Life for free. These conflicts beg the question, why was 2012 such a good year to play games and such a bad year to sell them?
Well, for one, not a lot of kids will be finding a big fancy game console under their tree this year.
This console cycle is beginning to end, and developers have figured out by now what does and does not work this gen. They also know how to squeeze every last drop of graphical fidelity out of their own hardware. Halo the 4th, Far Cry the 3rd, and even stinkers like Warfighter and Resi 6 look incredible compared to previous games. But this is a routine cycle. Towards the end of every console's life, you see games steadily maximize their hardware's potential while the technological innovations that drive artistic creativity start happening over on the PC end of things for a while. Note that all the games I name-dropped earlier in this video, except for Journey and Halo, have a PC version. And while PCs are great and all, the problem with them is that they're not as lucrative a market to support the absurdly expensive AAA games that publishers want to be selling. Fact is, the PC audience is smaller, and both game prices and sales volume are lower. Another problem is that this generation of consoles has gone on too long, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of consumer demand for another one. There also isn't much industry demand for it either because production prices are so high as it is. Step the graphical fidelity and production values up another generation and it's only gonna get more expensive. Topping it off is the notion that people have had literally 7 years to get around to buying an Xbox. Anyone who wants a modern console probably has one by now. As for the Vita, sales are slow as dirt. The Wii U and 3DS are doing better, but not enough to recoup their high cost of production. But that hasn't stopped developers from doing some of their best work. This contrast between quality and sales is actually a bit of a familiar situation. Remember how awesome 2004 was? Right when those consoles started to look old, we saw games come out that ended up defining those platforms. Games like San Andreas and Halo 2, and the PC releases were some of the best ever, with the Game of the Decade leading the charge. But guess what? Overall sales dipped that year too. Only difference is that it dipped by a lot less. So what's different about putting these consoles to bed than these?
Well, one easy answer is the recession.
But the more complicated answer was brewing far before the Great Recession of 2008 ever did. Game development became more democratized. The traditional means of game investment, production, and distribution have been shaken up, and corporate game makers now have to compete with all these indie guys and this whole big Steam thing that wasn't there last time. Blockbuster games cost too much to make, and especially too much to market, and the industry is figuring out ways to fix that. Developers who succeed with cheaper projects are the real winners these days. After all, any company that blows millions to pay 600 people to make a game with a smaller profit margin than a little mobile project is gonna look silly. Especially if their customers are also paying them for production. Way back in February, Tim Schafer decided to use Kickstarter to fund a new adventure game project that he didn't want investment firms and publishers dipping their fingers into. He asked for $400,000 and ended up getting over $3 million. For a lot of producers, the Kickstarter phenomenon has democratized project investment. Now the fans can decide what projects get the green light, which is awfully good news if you're a beloved internet love sack like Tim Schafer, Chris Avallone, Brian Fargo, or Chris Roberts. People really want 90s PC games made by veteran 90s PC devs. And don't forget about Steam Greenlight, which democratized the indie game selection process on Steam, but not without a few growing pains along the way. Meanwhile, back in A-Land, a lot of studios aren't even trying to push the graphical envelope anymore. Dishonored and Borderlands both went for style over realism and no one complained. Arting up 3D game visuals curbs costs enough to make projects like Quantum Conundrum and Unfinished Swan happen, and there used to just not be a market for these kinds of games. These projects break the traditional false dichotomy that the industry operated under 8 years ago, where most publisher-supported game releases were either $50 AAAs or shovelware. Where does something like the high-fidelity, multiplayer-only $30 Chivalry lie? How many A's does that game get? What about The Walking Dead? People bought that game in chunks of fifths for $5 per fifth, and it still managed to win over the sponsored dude bro hearts of Spike TV. Now they don't even sell the original episodes, the whole thing is available for $25. I mean, put yourself in a 2004 frame of mind and you're just like, what is that? It's not a physical product, it's a digital download that used to be episodic but isn't anymore, and it's half the price.
Honestly, I think we needed to scale back. I say the industry is better for its loss. Seriously, there's so many options for consuming games this year than the one before, and there were so many good ones too.
Just 4 years ago, it looked like we were headed towards a bleak next-gen future of real watered-down and basic AAA gaming that was gonna make you bear the brunt of an outright ridiculous production cost through petty microtransactions. Compared to now, I was bored as hell in 2008, but now I think the industry is trying harder for us. The cost of AAA game development has been unsustainable for a long time, and this year marked a few important shifts that are addressing that problem. And that's actually a really good situation for us regular folks. Competition lowers prices, increases variety, and pressures everyone to try harder to win over customers. Even the media about games got better. The PA Report and Polygon both launched this year to fill a hole of high-quality general news reporting. Robert Florence single-handedly brought UK game journalism to its knees for at least a week, and for better or worse, we spent a hell of a lot of time arguing about sexism. And of course, gaming videos on YouTube blew up into a bona fide cottage industry that fits right into the weird, eccentric digital cyberpunk future that 2012 is.
So a lot of news articles were pretty doom and gloom, but I felt fairly well taken care of. Things got bizarre at times, and it's clear that this business is changing, but maybe it's changing for the better. Well, 2012 was a hell of a ride. Maybe next year will be even weirder. But until then, I'll see you then. Merry Boxer's Day, everybody.